Wu isn't the same as knowledge. The process of Wu is different from cognitive activity. In cognitive stuff, we can tell who's doing the knowing and what's being known. The knower is all about our brain power. We're all knowers, using our smarts to pick up real facts, which is we know. So, cognitive activity always means we're getting something out of it. But what about Wu? It's more a process of realization, and what one realizes concerns matters residing within oneself. Wu doesn't involve acquisition of knowledge. When I said this, the British philosophy professor was staring at me with big eyes, like he was thinking, if there's nothing to be gained, then why bother seeking Wu? Oh man, I thought, this is getting tricky. I need to explain more. So, to talk about the second point, Wu is like water falling out from the bottom of a bucket. This is a metaphor. The ancient Chinese Zen masters often liked to use this phrase to explain the activity of Wu. What kind of metaphor is this? If we accumulate a lot of worries and problems in our life and work that we can't solve, we can compare these worries and problems to the water in a wooden bucket. As time goes on, the water accumulates more and more, and the bucket becomes almost too heavy to lift. What can we do? There is a solution. You can seek help from the Zen master in the Zen temples. Since the time of Master Huineng, Zen has really caught on in China, and now there are Zen temples all over the place. For the Chinese, Zen and Buddhism are pretty much the same thing. So, in every Zen temple, there's at least one Zen master, maybe even a few. They're like the priests in the old European churches, especially the ones you'd go to for confession. If a European was feeling troubled in their soul, they could go to the church and talk to a confessional priest to get some help. In ancient Chinese society, regardless of whether you were a scholar, farmer, artisan, or merchant, if you accumulated troubles and problems in your life or work that couldn't be resolved, you could go to a Zen temple and seek help from a sage of Zen Buddhism. So how does the Zen master help you? Does he help you by slowly pouring out the water from your bucket? If that's how he helps you, it means he's using specific knowledge or experience to solve your specific problems, one by one. But the Zen master doesn't have that kind of power. He's not omnipotent, and fundamentally, he believes he doesn't need to help you in that way. So how does he help you? He might say a few words to you, at most 3. Or he might not say anything and hit you with a stick, which is called xing bang ho. Or the third way is not to directly answer your question, but to ask you a question in return, which is called kenhuatu. What effect does the Zen master achieve by using one of these 3 methods or a combination of them? Suddenly, you find that the bottom of your bucket has fallen out, and all the water inside gushes out. This moment is called Wu. What does this mean? Initially, none of your troubles and problems were resolved, but suddenly you realized that all these problems were never really problems at all. This moment is called Wu, hence the term bottom falling out of the bucket. Let's ponder if our lives should have those moments, experiences of Wu. Think about it, old problems get sorted, but new ones pop up like nobody's business. If that's the deal, then our life's just a never-ending cycle of swapping out old problems for new ones. It's a bit sad, right? So, maybe we should dive into some Buddhist teachings, have those moments of Wu, and ask ourselves, has the bottom of the bucket fallen out? It's a real head-scratcher. When I got to this point, the British philosophy professor was staring at me with even wider eyes, so how could I not consider them a problem? I think he is a scholar, and scholars always expect me to provide a definition for Wu. I thought I'd give it a try and see if I could meet his expectations. So, for the third point, I provided a definition for Wu, of course, in English. The first word in this sentence, of course, cannot be translated into English, so I used the pinyin, Wu is having a tacit agreement with nothingness. Hey, everyone here has studied English, right? This have verb becomes a gerund, right? And this tacit is an adjective that means silent or not speaking. Agree with is a verb phrase, right? It means to agree with something. For example, I agree with you. Now, what do we turn this agree into? A noun, so it becomes agreement, still using the preposition with. Wu is having a tacit agreement with. I paused here, and he was waiting. I finally said nothingness. Nothingness means emptiness. The term tacit agreement means an unspoken understanding or agreement that doesn't need to be expressed in words. We often use the word tacit to describe the basic understanding that develops between family members due to long-term interaction. For example, between spouses, or between parents and children, there are certain basic understandings. You don't need to speak, a single glance conveys your attitude, and without saying a word, a simple gesture communicates your thoughts. If there is no tacit agreement among family members, family life would be very strange. There would be constant discussions, speeches, and debates every day, making family life abnormal. A normal family life is definitely built on a series of basic tacit agreements among its members. Now, what we are talking about here is not the tacit agreement between people, but the tacit agreement between our minds and the void. When he heard this, he finally encountered a nothingness, and he was completely dumbfounded, and I also completely gave up. We have discussed 3 points. I have explained these 3 points to a British philosophy professor to illustrate the process of Wu. With these 3 points, we can definitely understand that the concept of Wu in Zen Buddhism may or may not be translatable into English. It may not be possible. Can we find the right words? We cannot. What does it mean for our minds to have a tacit agreement with the void? Just talking about this point is not enough, right? We need to provide examples. So, let's take an example from the Platform Sutra of the 6th Patriarch to illustrate a case of Wu. This will help us better understand what Zen Buddhism means by Wu. We were just talking about Huineng, who couldn't read or write. Why? Well, when he was just a little kid, around 3 years old, his dad passed away. So, he missed out on getting an education and ended up growing up with his mom, and later on, he became a regular guy doing physical work, chopping and selling firewood to make a living. One day, after he sold some firewood at an inn, he heard someone on the street reciting some scriptures. And then, these 8 words came floating into Huineng's ears, to be detached from everything, giving rise to the inherent mind. Those are the same 8 words we talked about from the Diamond Sutra. And when he heard those words, something just clicked for him. He hurried over to the person reciting and asked, "What scripture are you reading?" The person said, "The Diamond Sutra." Huineng then asked, "Who taught you to read it?" The person replied, "In Huangmei County, Hubei Province, which was called Qizhou back then, there's a temple called Dongchan Temple. The head monk there, Master Hongren, who's the 5th Patriarch of Zen Buddhism, taught me, the Buddhist scriptures are as vast as the ocean, and you can't read them all. But really, if you just read one of them, like the Diamond Sutra, it's enough to benefit you for a lifetime." So, I took Master Hongren's advice, and I recite the Diamond Sutra every day. Upon hearing these words, Huineng was overjoyed and immediately made a great vow to find Master Hongren and seek his guidance. There is a story that follows this, where a friend gave Huineng 10 taels of silver, which was a huge sum of money at that time. Huineng used this money to take care of his elderly mother and then set out on his journey. He was from Guangdong and traveled all the way north to Hubei. Finally, he arrived at Dongchan Temple in Huangmei County, which is the scene I just described, right? Master Hongren asked him, "Where are you from? What are you seeking?" Huineng replied, I come from the Lingnan region and I have come to seek the Buddha's teachings. You are a southern barbarian, how can you understand the Buddha's teachings? Huineng immediately responded, people may be divided into northerners and southerners, but the Buddha nature has no such distinction. Master Hongren understood that this barbarian had great potential, but in order to protect him, he didn't accept him as a disciple, nor did he send him away. Instead, he asked him to work in the rice pounding room, and for over 8 months, he didn't go to see him. So, after Master Hongren asked his disciples to come up with some verses, right? Shinshio's verse didn't quite cut it for Master Hongren. So, Huineng decided to write his own verse, and someone even wrote it on the wall for him. Master Hongren knew that Huineng was on the verge of a breakthrough, and that evening he finally went to the rice pounding room to see Huineng. When he walked in, he saw Huineng pounding rice, which is a super tough physical job, by the way. It involves using a big stone connected to a long wooden pole to pound the rice. Now, Huineng wasn't exactly a powerhouse, so he came up with a clever solution. He found a big stone and tied it to his waist to give himself some extra oomph. When Hongren Master saw how Huineng was pounding the rice, he said, "A true seeker of the way forgets about their own body in pursuit of the Dharma." That's exactly how it should be. You, as a seeker of the way, have forgotten about your own body in your quest for the Buddha's teachings, and that's just as it should be. He praised Huineng and then asked him, "Is the rice done?" Meaning, is it cooked or ready to be washed? But Huineng, being the guy he was, didn't just take the question at face value. Huineng replied, "The rice has been done for ages. I pounded that rice a long time ago, it just needs to be sifted." Now, Hongren Master, being the wise man he was, didn't just take Huineng's response literally. He immediately understood what Huineng was getting at. The word for sift sounds like the word for teacher in Chinese. If you write it out, removing the bamboo part of the character for sift turns it into the character for teacher. Huineng was basically telling Hongren Master, I, Huineng, have been ready for a long time, I just need that final push from you, Master, to enlighten me. Master Hongren didn't say a word, just gave the pestle a few taps and left. Huineng got the message and was told to show up at the abbot's room at midnight. When the time came, Master Hongren covered the window with a big robe to keep the light from getting out. Finally, in the dim light, he started explaining the Diamond Sutra to Huineng. When he got to the part about there should be no place to live but to live in the heart, Huineng had a real aha moment. We don't know exactly how Master Hongren broke down those 8 words, but after that part, Huineng told him, "All right, I'll take it from here," and then he hit Master Hongren with 5 responses. I hadn't realized our true nature is inherently pure. I hadn't realized our true nature is inherently free from birth and death. I hadn't realized our true nature is inherently unshakable. I hadn't realized our true nature is inherently complete. I hadn't realized our true nature has the capacity to give rise to all phenomena. This inherent nature is referred to as one's true nature or Buddha nature. As we mentioned earlier, Huineng's verse, in response to Shinshio's verse, though it represents a higher realization, it is still at the doorstep, right? He eliminated the demarcation between our ordinary mind and the external world, but one should not dwell in this elimination because the elimination does not mean that something is completely gone and becomes empty. No, something emerges, and that is the latter half of the 4 words from the Diamond Sutra, and gives rise to the mind. This mind is the original mind, the self-original mind. Self-original mind, self-original nature, and Buddha nature are different terms but refer to the same thing, which is Buddha nature. Now Huineng realizes that it's not that everything is gone, Buddha nature has emerged. When we talk about Buddha nature, it may sound quite abstract. We often hear people talking about Buddha nature. Buddha nature, so, what exactly is Buddha nature? But do not think that Buddha nature is emptiness and stillness. It is not emptiness and stillness. Let's illustrate it with an example to understand what Buddha nature means. Every man or woman who comes into this world is destined to love once. This is not a decision we make subjectively. If it were a decision we made subjectively, the world would be very strange. Some people decide to love, and some people decide not to love, but that's not the case. Love is, of course, specific in each instance of romance, such as the special emotional connection between a man and a woman. It is very specific and also unique, but this specific and individual emotional connection is not a decision we made ourselves. When we come to this world, we must love at least once. Of course, the expression of our love is very concrete, loving Mr. Zhang instead of Mr. Li. However, this love itself is not our subjective decision. In other words, before we come into this world, there is already something awaiting us. What is this thing waiting for all of us? Buddha nature. What is one aspect of Buddha nature? Love. Buddha nature has many aspects, and all these aspects together are called Buddha nature. These many aspects are the various true values of life, their totality. In Buddhist terms, it's called Buddha nature. It is important to understand that Buddha nature is not empty or devoid of meaning. Don't misunderstand Buddhism when it talks about emptiness. Yes, it means that things don't have inherent existence and arise from causes and conditions. However, Buddha nature itself is not empty. It is the essence that is not empty and carries profound significance. It is us. Have you seen the Chinese dating show, If You Are the One Too? There's a poem in it. Regardless of who wrote this poem, I feel so moved when I read it. It brings love into the realm of Buddhism, right? Whether you see me or not, I am there, neither sad nor happy. Whether you think of me or not, the affection is there, neither coming nor going. Whether you love me or not, the love is there, neither increasing nor decreasing. What is this poem talking about in terms of love? Buddha nature. If someone has been in love 5 times, and each time they were rejected, and they conclude that love doesn't exist in this world, is their conclusion correct? No, it's wrong. Each specific love has its beginning and its end. It's impossible for a specific love to continue endlessly. Our lives are finite, but as long as we love each other, even if it's just for a short moment, that love becomes immortal, right? That's Buddha nature.